The valley of Elah was still echoing with the shouts of victory. The giant was fallen, the Philistines were in retreat, and a young shepherd named David stood in the center of it all. But while the crowds cheered, a deeper connection was forming in the royal tent. Jonathan, the son of King Saul and the rightful heir to the throne of Israel, watched David. The Bible says that the soul of Jonathan was knit with the soul of David. This wasn't just a casual friendship, it was an immediate recognition of shared spirit. Jonathan was a warrior himself, a man of great courage who had once taken on an entire garrison of Philistines with only his armor-bearer. In David, he saw a mirror of his own faith. In a stunning act of humility, Jonathan did something unheard of for a prince. He took off his royal robe and gave it to David. He gave him his tunic, his sword, his bow, and his belt. By doing this, Jonathan was symbolically handing over his right to the throne. He was saying, "I see that God has chosen you, and I am not your rival, I am your brother." As David began to lead Saul's armies, his success grew. He was wise, brave, and loved by the people. But as David's light grew brighter, King Saul's heart grew darker. The seeds of jealousy were being planted, and soon, the friendship between the prince and the shepherd would be tested by the madness of a king. The atmosphere in the palace of Gibeah changed. The songs of the women as Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands, rang in the king's ears like a curse. Saul began to look at David with a jealous eye. He saw David not as a servant, but as a threat. One evening, while David was playing the harp to soothe Saul's troubled spirit, the king's grip tightened on his spear. Without warning, Saul hurled the weapon, intending to pin David to the wall. David dodged it, not once, but twice. The hero of Israel was now a target in his own home. Jonathan was caught in an impossible position. He loved his father, the king. But he knew his father was slipping into darkness. He also loved David, whom he had sworn to protect. When Saul commanded Jonathan and all his attendants to kill David, Jonathan didn't hesitate. He warned David to hide, and then went to his father to plead David's case. "Why should you kill an innocent man?" Jonathan asked. For a brief moment, Saul listened and swore an oath not to harm him. David returned to the palace, and for a while, it seemed peace had returned. But jealousy is a monster that rarely stays quiet. Another victory in battle brought another fit of rage from Saul, and David had to flee into the night, leaving behind his life, his position, and his best friend. David was now a fugitive, hiding in the fields. He met Jonathan in secret, crying out, "What have I done? What is my crime?" Jonathan, still wanting to believe the best of his father, promised to find out Saul's true intentions. They devised a clever, secret signal. They agreed that Jonathan would come out to the field where David was hiding. He would shoot 3 arrows. If he told his servant boy, "The arrows are on this side of you," David was safe to return. But if he shouted, "The arrows are beyond you," it meant David must run for his life. At the feast of the new moon, David's seat was empty. When Saul asked why, Jonathan made an excuse for him. The king's reaction was explosive. He insulted Jonathan's mother and shouted that as long as David lived, Jonathan would never be king. Saul even hurled his spear at his own son. Heartbroken and grieving, Jonathan went to the field the next morning. He shot the arrows far into the distance and shouted to his boy, "Is not the arrow beyond you? Hurry, go quickly." It was a coded message of heartbreak. The boy had no idea he was delivering a life or death warning. Once the boy was sent back to the city, the two friends stood alone in the field. David emerged from behind the rock, and the weight of their reality hit them both at once. The two men fell on each other's necks and wept. David wept the most. They were losing everything: their proximity, their shared future in the palace, and the safety of their brotherhood. But in the midst of the tears, they made a covenant. Jonathan said to David, "Go in peace, for we have sworn friendship with each other in the name of the Lord." They promised that their families would always be linked. Jonathan asked David to show kindness to his descendants forever, a promise David would famously keep years later with Jonathan's son, Mephibosheth. This wasn't just a goodbye, it was a legacy. David vanished into the wilderness to live in caves and forests, and Jonathan returned to the palace to face a father he no longer recognized. They would only see each other one more time before Jonathan's tragic death in battle. The story of David and Jonathan is the ultimate example of agape love, sacrificial, selfless friendship. Jonathan was willing to lose a kingdom to save a friend. David was willing to lose his status to stay true to God's calling. In a world full of rivalry and competition, their story challenges us. Are we the kind of friend who gives up our own robes to lift someone else up? Thank you for watching this story of loyalty. If you have a friend who is like a brother or sister to you, share this video with them. Don't forget to subscribe as we follow David into the wilderness in our next episode.